Well, good day to you. It is April the 6th. Look at that, man. We are burning through this year already, aren't we? My name is Gary Willing, and as always, I want to welcome you to Search for Signs. And just also, as I like to do in the beginning of every video, just so you know, if you have not heard these videos before, and you want to know more about Maitreya, or if you want to see if there's any truth to this information, the best thing to do is to investigate it. Now, you can investigate it however you want to do it. That's your right. I'm not telling you to do it this way, but I am suggesting that the best thing to do is to go to some of the sites that I provided links for in the description portion of every one of these videos, such as the Sharon National site. Link is at the very top, because that website you will get the best background information about Maitreya, about his priorities, what he means for humanity, see some of the many miracle signs, those kind of things. And I can go on and on and on, but if you go to that site, you'll see what I'm talking about. And then you can decide for yourself if there's any truth to this. And that's why I am encouraging everyone to do it. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything, but just a little bit of your time. Now, if you want to join the discussion, let me know what you think by posting a comment. If you have a question, that's fine. I would have many questions if I had just been hearing these videos for the first time. You can do it a couple different ways. You can get me the question by posting your question in the comment section, and then I'll try to answer it in the next video, or you can email me at searchforsigns@mail.com. And I want to thank everybody who's commented and asked a question since the last time I put a video up. Now, Timothy had a couple questions for me. Let's dive into this. I thought I had heard you say before that about 1.8 billion people were following Maitreya's guises a few years ago. Am I mistaken? And how many now, if I weren't mistaken, and if you happen to know, and what are your sources? Thank you. So what I said was, I was quoting Benjamin Creme, okay, who was quoting his master. It was quoting Maitreya. Okay, so there's a lot of quotes in there, right? Some years ago, in the Helena Roerich books, I can't remember the exact one that this was said, but Maitreya, through her, said a long time ago, there was a time when one true man could save the world. And then there was a time when 10,000 wasn't enough. In the coming time, I will call on 1 billion people. And Ben was a very curious sort, and he asked his master one night, does Maitreya have his 1 billion people yet? Or is he still working on it? And his master said 1.5 billion people. But it wasn't following Maitreya's guises. It was people who would be called upon, or at least call up, they will hear the call within their heart to do something once Maitreya starts to really speak to humanity about the problems and what we need to do to solve those problems. So it's not following him, it's not believing in Maitreya, it's not believing he's the Christ and the old religious ways are wrong. It's not anything like that. It's people who see the problems in the world and want to do something about it, who perhaps now don't know what to do, but they're seeing the problems, those kind of things. And it's about 1.5 billion people, if it's not more than that. I don't have the exact number. I don't have that kind of connection with a master, but we can guess that it's probably more than that. But let's just say it's 1.5 where Ben left off a little over 10 years ago. So it's not the whole 8 billion people on this planet will do something to solve the environmental problem or to solve the economic divisions or the political divisions or whatever, bring about healthcare or end hunger. It's not the whole 8 billion, but it will be 1.5 that will be the first of humanity to respond to what Maitreya is saying. And Maitreya already knows those people and knows their hearts, knows what they've been thinking, because he can hear everybody's thoughts and knows what's in their hearts and knows their motives, throughout the day. And he knows that he's got about 1.5 billion people all around the world that when they hear this will go, yes, this is true. This is what we need to do. And we'll start to do something about it. So, right now I would say that 1.5 billion people are made up of a lot of different types of sorts, right? Whether it's probably the majority of them are just your average Jane and Joe, who get up every day, have a family, go to work, aren't really doing that much in terms of world service, but yet inwardly, deep down at their core, they desire the same changes that Maitreya will be advocating to humanity. They want to see peace. They want to see the end of hunger. They want to bring about justice. However they articulate it to themselves, that's what they want, right? In whatever language it is, right? And then there are probably some in that group who are already doing something, whether it's a lot or a little, to bring it about. But those are probably in the minority. There's not 1.8 billion people out there marching for change every week. You know what I mean? If it was, we'd be living in a totally different world, right? Now, the other thing that Ben's master said, and I can't remember where, but I just remember reading it or hearing Ben say it or something like that, that within the billions of people on this planet, there will be that 1.5 billion people who will start the changes in motion. Eventually, it will be everybody, but at the beginning, it's just going to be them. But there will also be a significantly sized group, and he didn't give an exact number for that group, so I don't know. It's roughly or probably around the same number of people that are in the progressive group, maybe a little less, who will be responding to the reactionary forces. And we'll see also, and there will be a large group of people in that group who will do everything they can to keep what Maitreya is saying from coming out. And they'll do everything they can. They probably already are to some degree. Because they see that it's the end of their power. And nobody likes to give up power if they have it, right? I mean, what do they say about power? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It takes an exceptionally detached person to be able to step away from that kind of power over other people, whether it's monetarily or politically or whatever. So there will be those people that will be trying to influence that group to assert their voice. And then, but that doesn't mathematically add up to 8 billion now, does it? So what's more likely for the other 5.5 or 6 billion people or whatever it happens to be, right? Well, Ben's master said that they won't know what to do. They will be basically not doing anything, probably trying to live their life and ignore everything because they will see the divisions. And as Maitreya starts to speak more and more people start to recognize what he's saying is true, and it's like, yes, this is what I've been thinking my whole life. This is what we need to do. This is what I've been talking about with you, or whatever it happens to be, right? But he's saying it better than me because he's the Christ. It's their heart opening up to the truth of what he's saying. As more and more of them start to do it, they will start to influence our very inept, feckless, corrupt political leaders around the world. Eventually, we'll start to vote those people out because they will be a very strong political force. According to Maitreya himself, it will be the strongest force in the world, the people power. But the people will demand from the government the change. And the governments will have to listen because it will be 1.5 billion people around the world with a very powerful voice and the most uncorruptible, but yet the most loving, wise, and articulate and galvanizing leader in Maitreya. So what are they going to do? They're going to have to listen to him, to those people, right? As those reactionary people start to I'm sure their power and influence will start to wane over the coming time, because more and more people will start to go, this actually kind of makes sense. Why am I holding on to, and I'll use this as an example, right? Why am I paying so much for healthcare and you guys are telling me it's the best thing when I'm looking over here and this sounds a lot better, not having to pay for healthcare. It's a right that I have, right? Why would I do that? And they'll, okay, fine. I think I kind of like this approach. Or, I've seen over the last, and this, I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff here, right? But somebody in that reactionary group might over time go, people kept telling me he was the Antichrist, but I don't really see it. I see that these changes have actually been helping people. Countries have been coming together. The air is cleaner, whatever it happens to be. And they'll go, you know what? I'm kind of in this group now. And more people will start to decide on the side of change. And then also, too, then you'll be, as more and more people are born and come into incarnation, well, they're going to be a lot more open to Maitreya because they won't have the hang-ups of conditioning that we've all had, being raised by people who were conditioned to believe us to be separate, to compete against one another and so forth and so forth. They won't have those hang-ups at all. So they'll be like, yeah, So less and less people will be incarnating that will be responding to the reactionary forces. But it's an energetic thing, Tim. So eventually it's not just all of a sudden just going to be turned off like a light switch. It's going to be a gradual thing over time. And then as everyone starts to go out of incarnation and come back into incarnation, they'll be more like the very, very open, progressive people that will be coming in, responding to the new energies, more and more and more, till eventually, however many billions of people are on this planet, everybody will be working toward that end of peace and sustaining the peace and the creativity and the joy of millions, be listening and trusting the masters and so forth, becoming eventually masters themselves and so forth. So it's a gradual process. But hopefully I did, if I did say something about following his guises, that's not what I meant. But I don't think I said that, which is fine. I don't expect everybody to remember everything I say, how I said it, because I don't remember everything that everybody says either, right? Now, out of that 1.5 billion people already, how many people really know about Maitreya? Probably not that many. Probably a handful of millions of people, just a very small percentage. How many people have seen Maitreya as a guise is probably a lot more than that and just don't know anything about it. A lot more than that. But maybe that's where you were thinking. Does that make sense? But, if we switch gears to the political side of things, I know some people like it and some people don't when I talk about politics, especially in the United States, but it's an important thing to talk about. It's a part of the process of change, but it's also a part of what's keeping things back and holding things back is the political area. I think Ben's master said that was the hardest nut to crack out of all the tyranny that humanity is under right now. Politics, economics, and religious. The three tyrants. The political one is going to be the hardest one to fall. But once it does, the others will fall too, because they're all kind of interrelated. Now you're getting, in the United States, you're getting the right, who are very much swinging back to the religious, because they know how much that conditions the base and keeps it there. It's very easy for people to relate, because we're kind of a feeling people. We don't really think. We think we're thinking, but we don't. We operate more from the emotional side of things, right? Now, why am I bringing this up? Because there was a glimmer of hope in the president that is president now, Joe Biden. Someone who I didn't vote for. I didn't get a chance to vote for in the primary because they had postponed it because of COVID. And then he had already, got the nomination once Georgia went to go vote. So I kind of missed a chance to vote. And then when it came to the general election, I did not like him because I didn't think he was progressive enough, and I sure as heck didn't like Trump. So what do? I wrote in Bernie Sanders. So I didn't vote for him, and because I was thinking that Georgia was not going to be in play at all, but it ended up being very, very razor close, and it was one of the reasons why Biden won the election and Trump didn't. So I was kind of wrong about that. Now, why do I bring this up? Is because just the other day, he was at a fundraiser with Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, and they're on stage, and they're talking about a whole bunch of stuff. And I didn't really take the time to listen to what they were saying, but I did see this one situation that happened, and there were some protesters in the crowd that stood up and started protesting the what's going on in Palestine and what Israel has been doing to Palestine. And as the ushers and the security were trying to usher him out, Biden said the most extraordinary thing, something that I have not heard from any president when this has happened, or presidential candidate when this has happened, when they've been confronted by protesters in their own, speaking engagement. He said, they have a point. He actually listened to them. Quite extraordinary if you think about it. Tell me the last time you heard a presidential candidate or president say that when they were confronted by somebody in their audience. Then you have the alternative some years ago when somebody stood up and confronted him. He was telling his supporters to beat the crap out of him. Take him out back and beat him up. I'll pay for your legal fees. Bull crap, bull crap, bull crap. From a very weak coward telling his protesters to beat somebody up. Yeah, whatever. And then he was going to pay for the legal fees. Never going to happen because he doesn't pay for anybody's legal fees. He's only concerned about himself. Now, this particular president said the exact opposite of that. They have a point. Now, whether he does something about it or not is a whole other thing, but at least he took the second and a half to listen to them. You know what I mean? So this is eventually our presidents and our leaders around the world and so forth might not look what we want, like how we like them to look. They might not act how we want them to act, or they might not have political agendas that we want, 100% or whatever like this. But if we can just get them to listen, well, then we got a chance, right? Because the voting, the change is not going to happen by the governments leading the way. That's the mistake that we've had about our political, the way the politics works in this country and around the world. What's going to change, what's going to bring about the changes that we all want, the healing of the political divide, perhaps, for some of us, the bringing about of justice or the ending of hunger or the solving of the environmental problem. The only way that governments are going to act is if people actually force them to act. Peacefully, of course, right? But just, and the reactionary forces will do whatever they can, buy whoever they have to buy to keep them in power. But the progressive forces, those people who want the change, more and more and more will have their influence on those presidents and representatives, prime ministers, congressmen, whatever it happens to be, to force them to make the changes that need to be made. And the reason why they'll be able to do it is because at the helm of that group will eventually be the most uncorruptible, most articulate, wise, and loving leader, and most galvanizing leader that has ever set foot on the world stage ever, and that's Maitreya. Will be able to articulate exactly what's in the hearts and the aspiration, and speak the aspirations of the people who are now so not doing anything, Now, the other thing I want to say too is I read articles from Benjamin Crime's master, and I always encourage everyone to read it for themselves because you can really internalize better what this master is trying to say in these articles. But very simple and very wise. But one of the things that he's talked about in an article that I just recorded, and I'll kind of paraphrase it, is he said that the people are misinterpreting their own scriptures, and every situation that comes up, and he was talking about Yugoslavia, that's how long ago this was written, right? That Yugoslavia had switched from the Middle East. For a while, Middle East, people were interpreting that the conflict in Iraq, this was back in the early 90s, was Armageddon, that the world was going to end. There was going to be it was going to be the mark of the Third World War, and this has all been written in Revelation and and this is the final conflict that's going to end it all. Well, it didn't happen. And this is what Ben had been saying all along, that there is no Armageddon in the way that people are interpreting, right? So I'm getting to a point on this, because this is kind of crucial to that group of people that aren't doing anything. Okay, so but want to see the changes is my point. Now, then it switched to Yugoslavia. Then there was this conflict and genocide in Yugoslavia with Milosevic, and people started to think, well, then maybe this is it. Maybe this is what was written in Revelation and so forth. And he said this is people misinterpreting their own scriptures. And yet when they influence people, they're creating nothing but they're causing fear in the hearts of people, in the minds of people, but they're also causing heartache and it's causing inaction. And this fear about the end of the world that people put out there. And it's always about this. Now it's about Ukraine or the Middle East and Israel and so forth or whatever. It's been put out and they always put it out and put it out. It's this. Now it's the eclipse coming out or whatever it happens to be. When we have fear and we put out fear, it creates an action once somebody's like, oh my gosh, that could be it, right? We could be the end of the world. They don't do anything. Do you see what I'm saying? That's the reason why the people aren't standing up and saying, this is wrong, we need to move on. we need to vote you out, whatever it happens, whatever the situation happens to be. So if I can make any suggestion, you don't know who I am, but within one hand, we have the potential of spreading fear. We don't know how it harms people when we do. We don't know how it creates fear within them, and then they turn around and spread it to somebody else and spread it to somebody else. And we don't know how far out our fear goes before it comes back to us. And it's going to come back and knock us in the head eventually. Now, on the other hand, you have the exact opposite. You have hope, love, perhaps a bit of expectancy of the future, and that humanity will get it right, and that kind of thing. That we're not going to kill ourselves or whatever. And when you spread that, we don't know what it does in terms of somebody else telling somebody else, but it doesn't create fear within somebody. Hope and joy bring about action. Fear brings about inaction. So we're harming people when we spread fear. I know people that spread fear don't realize that that's what they're doing, but that's what they're doing. And we have it within our hands to do either. So hopefully you'll choose hope. That's why it's so important to investigate this information for yourself. Look into it. Read the Share International website, some of the information on there. Read some of these masters' articles. It will give you a greater sense of hope for the future, even if you don't believe it 100%. And then when you get around a coworker who's thinking that the world's going to end, you say, maybe not. Maybe it won't end. Maybe this isn't the end of the world. They've been saying this for the last 2,000 years that the world was going to end. We're still here. It ain't over till it's over, as they say, right? But anyway, I love you guys. Thank you very much for the questions, Tim. And I look forward to more questions in the future from everybody. You guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.